What do you live for? Money? Love? Power? Well, the correct answer, clearly, is boobs. Straddled with the debt left behind by his father, our main character, Denji, lives a pretty shitty life. Even as a kid, he's forced to sell one of his balls for cash. And also a kidney, but that's not really as funny. But he's still broke. He's got nothing going on for him in his life. No friends, no self-respect, no future. Only having Pochita, a pet dog with a saw sticking out of his head. But left with no alternative, he takes the only possible route left to him. He kills devils themselves, which sounds really cool, and don't get me wrong, it would be if he weren't fighting the whole cast of the fucking VeggieTales. But from this whole tomato devil incident, shit really goes downhill for him. Now, you wouldn't really associate being a member of a gang with being particularly smart, and in this case, you'd be pretty correct in doing so, because the boss of the gang Denji owes money to, with all of his 3 brain cells, decides that he's going to sell himself and all of his subordinates to a not any way suspiciously named zombie devil for power. Can you guess what happens to them next? Surprise, surprise, they become zombies. Now this zombie devil, pretty unfortunately for our boy Denji, isn't a fan of this whole devil hunting stuff he's gotten into, and so it takes the actually pretty reasonable approach of stabbing him like 50 times. And I'm not some kind of biology expert either, but that makes him kinda dead. But fear not, he is the main character and this is the first episode, so instead, Pochita gives his own heart to Denji, telling him to truly live, to find his dream, which is honestly kind of touching for a second. Then Denji's head becomes a fucking chainsaw. No, you didn't hear that wrong. His head becomes a goddamn piece of forestry equipment, and saw blades rip out of his forearms, and he rips everybody in the room to shreds. But this is digressing from the real purpose of the scene, as Denji thinks about his meaningless life, and what he really wants. Now, after all this heartfelt reflection, my man decides that he just wants to get laid. And unlike most anime fans though, he actually has a chance, as we're then immediately introduced to Makima, who is definitely not the best girl of the show, but is certainly the hottest. Denji certainly agrees, because after she shows the tiniest bit of affection for him, he immediately becomes her bitch. And no, that's not an exaggeration, he literally agrees to become her dog. And I can kinda relate, I wish he'd step for anyway. So, Makima is a devil hunter, a proper one under the government, and she takes Denji back to both train and control him. Thus begins the Public Safety Department arc. My best bit of advice is, don't get attached to a single person. No one. Trust me, it won't end well. Thankfully, in this arc, we start to get some real character development for Denji. Kind of. He's introduced to Aki, a senior officer who isn't a fan of this random 16-year-old dude with no training just randomly becoming this professional devil hunter. That's where the logic ends though, because Aki then decides that the best way to resolve this is just by beating the fuck out of Denji in an alleyway until he goes away. Unfortunately for Aki, Denji isn't just any normal simp, but a master of nut-breaking ninjutsu. After a little scuffle and the permanent sterilization of Aki's testicles, their situation is resolved, and Makima assigns Denji to Aki's squad, where we meet, in my opinion, the best girl of the whole show. Power. The best, and most surprising thing about Power, is that the author doesn't constantly try to hint at them banging, because you'd be hard-pressed to find a single other girl that Denji doesn't almost fuck. And I say almost, because this guy gets blue-balled more times than the average rom-com protagonist. Of course, from here, shit just gets weirder, as they go about killing devils and forming agreements that pretty much always consist of Denji risking his life in exchange for some kind of a lewd favour. Which sounds kind of reasonable to me. As they go about collecting pieces of the Gun Devil, one of the most powerful devils that comes from, you guessed it, America, land of the free baby. Now, I'm not going to spoil too much of this arc, but it contains some really screwed up stuff, and some pretty large plot twists. Some very large plot. But this arc culminates in the President of the United States summoning the Gun Devil using 1 year of life from every American citizen in order to attack Japan. Historical implications and past events aside, I have to say the fights and animation in this anime are surreal. They're damn near perfect, from the gore to the impacts. I mean, wow, it's brutal and it's kinda cool. One really well written aspect to Chainsaw Man is that in every twist, you look back and you can see the signs leading up to it, but you aren't really sure of it until it does happen. And it gets me every time. Case in point, Makima. No spoilers, but you can see it in her behaviour every time you look back after it happens. Still think our character's kind of cool though, despite that. Just a little aside before we finish, if you've ever even briefly heard of Tatsuki Fujimoto, you'll know how much of a fucking madman he is. A few of his feats include attempting to levitate, which he did successfully for all of about 3 seconds before gravity got to him, pretending to be his own made-up and forever 8-year-old sister on Twitter, as well as listing the names of famous manga artists in death tolls in his fight scenes, which I think is actually a pretty cool, albeit kinda weird way of paying respects to people in the industry. And maybe a madman, but he's a hilarious and very talented one. I'll link the Twitter account and the levitation attempts in the comments. Now, I've got to say, after going pretty much through the entirety of the show that's aired and some bits of the manga, as much as I do want Makima to step on me, I'm a pretty big Power fan now. The interactions are sweet, and not in a romantic way either. It's just pretty wholesome. Up until, that point. Not the series though, the series is anything but wholesome. But the little intimate moments manage to be pretty nice despite the overall tone. They're really well written. Now, I do think the newest saga after the completion of the current one is interesting, but I'm not really sure about it. I'll probably just end up reading it at some point after a few more volumes are out. Right, that's been me. I take suggestions in the comments. Drop a like and a subscribe for more of this stuff. See ya.